Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Monday college football, basketball, baseball blitz sidelines, www.sidelines.live, and on radio stations around the South as we're growing, like Sports Radio, FM 104.7, Cookeville, Tennessee, on the Cumberland Plateau. Radio Alabama Group, Kicks 96.3, Alexander City, Alabama, and Lake Martin. And you can check us out if you missed the show live on the radio or www.sidelines.live. We're here 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. We talk about sports on the college level. Of course, we're going to bounce around with what's going on in the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, because these folks go back and forth. They're in college. They go to the majors, the pros, the NBA, they come back. So we get great insight, great guests every week. 6 times a week, 2 hours a day. Follow us on Twitter at sidelines_live. All right, Billy Roberts is with us over in Brookhaven, right next to Atlanta and Buckhead, all that there together. Billy, there's a lot happening in the sports world on the college level. And, looking at, and we get into this, and we did last week, we talked a lot about the Super Bowl we had been for the last couple of weeks. Now it's in college basketball, the last 5 or 6 games of most conference schedules. And right now, if you look at the ranked teams, the SEC, the highest ranked team, of course, is Alabama. Tennessee's up there. But how many SEC teams do you think at this point, based on what you've seen? Alabama goes on the road last week. They don't shoot well at all. That's not unusual. But last year, we thought the SEC, and I just didn't see it, but a lot of coaches did, thought it was an historically great year. You had 1 team from the SEC in the Elite 8. You had 3 from the ACC in the Elite 8. Based on what you've seen so far, top to bottom, is there just a bunch of good teams beating up on each other, and Alabama's the best of those? Or do we have a couple of teams that you think can get to the Final Four? Because I'm not seeing a lot of great basketball.
I think that the season has taken its toll, and everybody's legs are gone, and their shooting isn't what it was. So it's probably teams that are beating each other up, but they may not have been all that great to begin with. But as they got into the meat of the conference schedule, they've those road games are hard. And I think that's where it's taken its toll. It's a long season all of a sudden. So that's probably what's going on. Alabama can't be great at everything. I guess maybe in the lacrosse or field hockey, maybe they're last in the conference. I don't know. They seem to be good at every sport. It's like, that's got to stop. We got to put a stop to that.
Well, I mean, Alabama in football, and of course last year basketball was not very good. This year they're really good in basketball. But just like Auburn last year, Auburn was 15-3, won the SEC. They got into the NCAA tournament, and they got knocked out in the second round by a Miami team that started 4 guards, lost by about 20 points. Arkansas, a team that started off really slow last year, finished strong, made it to the Elite 8, and in the process knocked off the number 1 overall seed, Gonzaga, by doing that. I'm just looking at the Purdue. How good is Purdue? We see this a lot lately. Look at Houston. Look at Alabama, Kansas. I don't know. I'm just one of these people. I look around, and I think you can tell a lot. The SEC top to bottom, Georgia's won, I think, 6 conference games. Last year they won 1. What does that say about? Does that say that the league's not good, or Georgia's just improved on? I think it really says that Georgia's just improved under Mike White more than anything.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they've got all the recruiting ability right at their fingertips, so they just need to get the guys. That's the question about Georgia is like, how can they be right next door to Atlanta with all of this high school basketball talent and not just cherry pick just like the football team does and take what they want. So maybe he's starting to assert himself there's a little whiff of success in the program, so players maybe want to be associated with it and stay at home. So they're going to get better if they can convert some of these guys out of Atlanta. I mean, Auburn has taken a bunch of guys out of Atlanta the last couple of years under Bruce Pearl.
Yeah.
And their ascension as a program is easy to track. And it's, they've been getting like Kessler, Smith, a lot of guys right out of Atlanta have gone 2 hours away to Auburn. Athens is an hour away from Atlanta. So they ought to be good. And there's no excuse for them not to be. So under White, maybe they're, they're starting to convert some of the recruiting, potential into real success on the court.
Yeah, and I look around nationally in college basketball and say, you look at the big metro area like Houston, and Houston really doesn't garner that much attention unless they get deep in the tournament in their own city. And of course, the Big 12 thought it'd be a good idea to bring them in as a new conference member, and they're thinking the same thing with Orlando, with Central Florida, Cincinnati with Cincinnati, and BYU. Of course, BYU is a national, really international brand because they're the mothership of the Mormon Church, BYU Athletics, and they already have their own channel, the BYU channel. I don't know if that's going to stay around, but I look at what I see in all this conference expansion, Billy, and we keep hearing talk about going to a few super conferences. And, like what we have 32 NFL teams. I don't see us cutting down to 32 or, a 216 team super conferences in college football. I think there's too many fans around the country. There's too much interest. If you shut out that many schools, that's a problem. Now, basketball, Division I, you have 131 schools in football that are eligible to make the college football playoff. Basketball, you got 357. It doesn't take that much money to get a basketball program going. Are you in favor of going to a couple of super conferences, Eastern, Western Division? I'm not.
Well, I don't think it'll work, and I'll tell you why. I was up in New York visiting my daughter in October, and we went to a sports bar to try to catch the Georgia-Auburn game on TV up there. And at the time, Georgia was, number one in the country. And, there was no TV in the biggest sports bar we could find in the middle of Manhattan that had Georgia on, forget Auburn, that had Georgia on the CBS 3:30 game, the marquee game of the year. They were playing crazy stuff, schools that were not relevant at all, and they had fans watching that. So the message to me was college football, unlike the NFL, at this moment, is still a regional sport in a lot of ways. And like you said, there's a lot of fan base interest, but, with natural rivals, one state over, border war kind of stuff. The NFL has pivoted away from that, and it's probably driven a lot by fantasy football, because a lot of us will watch a pro team not because we live in Las Vegas and we want to follow the Raiders, but there might be a couple of Auburn guys on that team that we followed as college fans, right? And also we might have a fantasy team where we're playing against other people in our office, and we want to watch what our guys are doing so we can win our fantasy league against people in the office. So you're invested in regional games in the NFL in a way you're not in college. So hats off to the NFL for figuring that formula out, but they've made every single game national interest because of fantasy football, because your favorite college player might be playing for Buffalo or the Raiders or some far off place, and you live in Florida. You might be watching a Buffalo game, otherwise you wouldn't care about it at all. I'm not going to watch a Rutgers football game at all, ever, and I'm down here in the South where there's plenty of other, football teams to follow.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between, the college football right now and the NFL right now. If they're become.
Yeah. Well, I look at what is happening nationally. Well, yeah, we were breaking up there a little bit, Billy. There's some clicking on there. I'm not sure what that is, but we lost you there for a minute. But I agree. If you go back 40 years ago, college football was a regional sport. ABC before that 1984 CFA lawsuit on behalf of Georgia and Oklahoma, basically it just opened the floodgates of every college football game is now on TV. You look around, back then they had the regional games. You couldn't be on TV more than 5 times in a 2-year period. That's how they did it. And they would not show the games in the South all over the country like they do now. When CBS came on board with college football, all of a sudden that SEC game of the week was on every TV set in America. That's a big deal. And ESPN, the proliferation of Fox Sports, there's so many other venues to show. And now, after the 2023 season, CBS will no longer be showing that SEC game of the week. It's going to be ESPN. But look what Fox Sports is doing. Fox Sports has jumped up. They have the Big Noon, is what they call it. That's their premier matchup, is at 12 Eastern, 11 a.m. Central for the Big Ten game of the week. I'm not going to be surprised if Fox doesn't buy ESPN or make a bid to buy them, or somebody like Apple, because I think if you look at the future, so many people consume everything via an iPhone or an Android, but a handheld device, maybe an iPad or a laptop, but really it's their cell phone. They're going to watch games on there. Who better to figure out how to make that, successful than Apple? That's what we need to be watching out for. And I don't know, ESPN is going to pay, CBS was paying $55 million for the SEC football game of the week. ESPN is going to pay somewhere between $300 and $350 million. Look at the deal the Big Ten just got. It's a lot bigger. It's a massive deal. You got Texas and Oklahoma coming in. We all know that. Is that going to go? The 21-22 revenue, the checks, $49.9 million per conference member. We don't know what 22-23 is, but we know what this one is. It's just under $50 million a school. The Big Ten, with now adding Southern Cal and UCLA, they're going to have 70% of the TV sets in America are going to be in their geographical footprint. You think they won up the SEC?
Well, I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. I think it really just comes down to the cycle of when these contracts renew, and the Big Ten, is like a year ahead, maybe 2, for the media rights, with the networks over the SEC. But the SEC, just like they did when they created the SEC network to begin with versus the Big Ten network, they wait and see what decisions are made, and then they come in and they negotiate a better deal for themselves. And I'll give you an example. The Big Ten kind of went it alone when they created the Big Ten network, and they had to invest a lot of money to build that. Now, it worked for them just fine, but the SEC came in and partnered with ESPN when they built the SEC network, and immediately they had a lot less trouble getting the TV sets and the distribution across the country than the Big Ten had to do it brick by brick, house by house. So the SEC can sit and wait and see what's going to happen with the rights negotiations for the Big Ten, and then they'll trump it with a bigger deal, particularly with Oklahoma and Texas. And the reason why that is absolutely guaranteed to happen is Texas had their own network, a Longhorn network, as we know. They didn't share their media rights with anybody else in the Big 12. And if they join the SEC, where they have to pool their media rights with everybody else, and there's an equal distribution even with Vanderbilt, then you can rest assured that the math is going to work out where they're leaving the Longhorn network behind. That'll probably be Ocho, right? It'll turn into ESPN 8 or something, like from Dodgeball. And that is where, the money's going to pop in.
Well, the Big Ten network, when they did it, they did Jerry DiNardo, I think, was kind of their original guy on the Big Ten network. And it's on TV sets everywhere in the country. It's really strange how that works. In the SEC network, you'd be surprised. I have people tell me down in Fort Myers and Naples and Tampa, you can go to a hotel somewhere and there's Big Ten network free everywhere. You go to that same hotel, and SEC Network, it's not on there. Either it costs too much or whatever. I don't know what the Big Ten Network has done, but they're putting their brand out there everywhere. But it's still not winning them national championships. I mean, you go back the last 50 years, we say it a lot on this show. Last 50 years, the Big Ten has 2.5 national championships. The SEC has 20 in football. I don't think.
Well, the product's better on the field. I mean, let's go back to what you said a minute ago about the big noon thing. You and I have sat there countless games that are 11 a.m. Central kickoffs, and it doesn't matter who the game is. The teams are flat. It's too early in the day. The fans haven't had a chance to really have a tailgate where they're get ramped up. That's too early for a marquee matchup. I mean, that 11 a.m. kickoff in the SEC is one of the worst games of the day. It's probably the fourth or fifth game on the. So if the Big Ten is creating this big noon and that's their marquee game of the year, of the week, I think that's a failed model. So yes, they go coast to coast now. But if you're UCLA and you are relegated to playing the big noon game against Purdue, that's a 9 a.m. game in California. Are you going to get excited about that? There's zero chance of that. So I think that's the product on the field of that given day, given that kickoff, is not going to be a good product to watch on television. The SEC's game is at 3:30, and then another one that night at 8 o'clock, and the fans are going bananas, and it makes for good television.
Yeah, we're going to take a break, and I'll say this: that 9, you're right. It is going to be a 9 a.m. kickoff for Southern Cal and UCLA fans. I don't know what they're thinking is going to happen. We're going to talk right after this break.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Billy, this is what we're talking about. Audrey and I, even during the break, who's going to get up on the West Coast and watch those games, Southern Cal and UCLA? And we keep hearing Oregon and Washington may be added to the Big Ten. I mean, those fans, you're talking about tailgating at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't see it.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. And, it's the West Coast already. Their level of enthusiasm for college football has been a question mark for a while now, right? I mean, the Pac-12 has been a bit of a disaster. They really have been behind the curve from the Big Ten and the SEC about figuring out, the network and figuring out how to get their team in the 14 playoff. So you have to wonder how important it is to those teams. So yes, the Big Ten can say we're going to go grab a bunch of these TV sets. So that's a financial argument that does not translate into fan enthusiasm, and that's what they're going to have to convert. And I don't see that happening. Southern Cal and UCLA are not what they were 10 or 12 years ago. They're going to have to rebuild in the national conscience. And I mean, it can happen, but the fans seem apathetic. So, I'm not really sure. I'm wondering, what it's going to, but again, a 9 a.m. kickoff for the marquee game of the day, the big noon game, that seems like an exercise in marketing that may end up being a big failure. But I guarantee you, like I said, the 3:30 game that I was up in New York and it was on CBS, and I had to tell the bartender, hey, the Georgia Auburn game's on TV. Can you put that on? And like, well, what channel is it on? I said CBS. It's the third biggest network or second biggest network, depending on how you count eyeballs.
Yeah.
Put CBS on that TV. It was ridiculous, and they did. And then a bunch of people turned and started watching it, but that wasn't their instinct at that sports bar up there to put an SEC 3:30 game on TV. They had an ACC game on. I think it was Wake Forest and maybe
Yeah.
Boston College or something that, well, again, was of
Yeah.
regional interest of people up in the middle of New York in October.
Yeah. Well, New York City is so big, but it's just got that's as a TV market, there's a lot of people there. It's kind of like if you want to try to make everybody average, I guess that's a terrible goal. Go for it. But they're not all ever going to all be the same.
Well, and that's a pro town up there. We all know
it's
that.
a pro town. Exactly.
And so college football, is not the biggest thing going on a October Saturday in New York City. I get that, but that's a lot of people from a lot of different schools that are alumni. My daughter's an Auburn grad, and like your son is, and she moved to New York, and we were hunting for a bar that would show the Auburn game. So there's got to be a couple
There's several
hundred.
of them.
Yeah, so there's enough people they should have had that game on with the number one team in the country, Georgia. But that just reinforces a couple things. New York's a pro town. College football is not the biggest thing they've got going on. But secondly, it's a regional sport still, and Georgia, number one in the country, is still a Southern school that people up in the Northeast are not as interested in as watching Boston College or Syracuse, which is crazy to us
Or
because
Penn
we're
State.
focusing on the product on the field.
Yeah.
Syracuse versus Georgia in terms of the product on the field, there's no comparison. But football has regional fans and regional alumni that basically stay close to the school that they graduated from and don't venture too far away. The NFL is a different thing. It's completely a national game. And I get back to the point of I think it's driven by fantasy football. That's my thesis. I don't know if I'm completely accurate on that, but I think that's what's behind it because I look at why am I watching a Raiders Chargers game? That's because there might be a couple Auburn guys on those rosters that I'm interested in seeing how they're doing, right?
Yeah. So, fantasy football is huge for pro sports, whether it's football, baseball. It just draws people's interest. It's like you owning shares of stock in a publicly traded company. You watch it every day, regardless, because you're an investor. There are two kinds of people. There's takers, there's investors. You've got stock in the company. You've got a dog in the hunt. It's exactly what it is. And I don't know, with the transfer portal, like it is, it would be very difficult to have a fantasy football league on the college level because guys are leaving 3 games into the season. And as bad as that is, we don't like it. It'll fix itself because Bo Carter, one of our regular guests on Fridays out in Dallas, National Football Foundation writer, he says that in the 30s and 40s, that happened a lot between TCU, Texas A&M, and schools out in Texas. Guys would leave, during the season. So that's going to happen, and it will. And we always seem to think, it's going to be so bad, and the world's coming to an end. It's just not like that. You're going to end up seeing more and more cases of the free market trumping all this, forecast of gloom and doom. And as far as paying players right now, that's what the rage is. But I'm looking forward to somebody that can produce the stats for me. What's the average number of players on, let's say, an SEC school? We'll start with the Southeastern Conference. I would like to see the average number of players who have a substantial NIL deal. And by that, I'm talking more than $25,000 a year. We know about the handful that have the big ones. But, Billy, I would dare to say most of the NIL deals are probably very small. It may be, you get a truck to drive from a local dealership. It could be anything like that. But I don't think there's very many of these 7-figure deals out there.
I don't think so either. And, the SEC's typically in the vanguard for any change that happens in college football. So, they'll figure out a solution pretty quickly for whatever rough edges the NIL has brought and the transfer portal has brought. And I mention them both in the same breath because I think that we've got this unintended culture now of I'm not going to be the starter, so I'm going to pack up and go go to another team. I mean, even right now between Georgia and Auburn, depending on who the starting quarterback is going to end up being there, the backup may transfer to Auburn because they've got a good quarterback head coach. All of a sudden they're in freeze, and Auburn may be the lucky beneficiary of a pretty good quarterback that they previously haven't been able to sign during signing day for how many years. So some schools are going to benefit from that. A school like Georgia that's got an embarrassment of riches over there with all of the recruiting that they've done. You can't keep every player happy. There's not enough playing time to go around. They can maintain discipline in a program like that because they parcel out playing time based on meritocracy there, right? Whoever's the best guy. There's no starting jobs guaranteed, but there's a heck of a lot of talent. Like, well, if I can't be the starting running back or 1 hour away.
Yeah, Billy, I can't hear you, but the problem is when you go get a big time quarterback now. Look at like in case of Georgia, Carson Beck, Gunnar Stockton. Those are two guys, and there's three in the quarterback room, all big time recruits, and because of that. Here's what I think will happen. One, obviously, you're going to name one a starter. There'll be a backup. That guy that's third team was going to think, well, golly, I was a 4 or a 5-star coming out of high school. I can go somewhere else. And this is not new either. Players have always been recruited while they were in school. When you and I were in school at Auburn in the mid-'80s, I remember friends on the team that were getting called that were from Atlanta by coaches from Georgia Tech their freshman year almost every night saying, look, if you're not happy, come on back. We'd love to have you. That stuff happens. But what we're seeing more of now is more national recruiting. Alabama has players on their roster from 20 or more states. So does Auburn. So does Georgia. I saw a stat that showed the amount of money the recruiting budgets. And I'm going to pull this figure up and read it to you. The top 2022 recruiting budgets, according to USA Today. Georgia, 4.6 million. A&M, 2.98 million. Tennessee, 2.92 million. Texas, 2.44 million. Alabama, 2.32 million. Well, Georgia having to spend $4.5 million to recruit. I mean, what are you spending that on? And I don't know. What I want to know is that figure including taking into account NIL? Because
it's a wonder.
We remember, Billy. I try fixing your phone. I'm unable to. I'm unable to hear you. But I'd like to know how much of that is NIL, because I know that the rumor in the class of 23 or the class of 22 that A&M signed a year ago, February, was they'd spent a small fortune to get that class. And, most of their players are from Texas. So how you spend, if you just tell people spend whatever you want on recruiting, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Is it impressive to say you spent $4.5 million on recruiting? What I question is that money from the athletic department paid for by private fundraising or whatever? I mean, that seems like a lot of money to spend to recruit a class. So, I don't know if it includes NIL or not, but that's a an obscene amount of money to spend on a recruiting class, Billy.
Well, but if you think about you were mentioning a minute ago,
Billy, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Billy, call back, try to call back. I can't hear. I'm unable to hear you. But we got, we're going to be joined now by Coach Tim Horton out at the United States Air Force Academy. And you're up early every day. Spring practice has started. You may be the first school that has started spring practice, Coach. There's a lot happening in the world of college football. But one thing I love about Air Force is you've got true student athletes there. You've been around, played at Arkansas, coached at Arkansas, Auburn, Appalachian State, Air Force. You've been at Vanderbilt. You're back at Air Force for a second time. And another thing about Air Force Academy, in the last 40 years, you've had two coaches, Fisher DeBerry and Troy, Calhoun. That's stability is pretty amazing.
It is, Rob. And first off, it's always good to be on your show, and thank you for having me. We are actually the second program in the country to start spring practice. Hawaii has already started as well. So the boys out in Hawaii have gotten started. In fact, tomorrow will be our third day. But again, it's just an honor to be here and always an honor to visit with you about different things.
Yeah. And the popularity of college football just gets bigger and bigger every year. And I look at, you're in the Mountain West Conference. Your competition out there, we've talked about this before, the difference in what you see and what you've seen in the SEC at Appalachian State. But this is your second time back at Air Force. Air Force is 10-3 last year. It's a lot of fun to win 10 games. You're in a different situation where student athletes that you're coaching are also training to be fighter pilots. Most of them are probably in engineering or some very, very tough academic classes. When you look at the kids that you coach, what do they think about NIL with these other student athletes other than at West Point or Annapolis are getting? Does that affect when you're out there recruiting? Or do you there's a certain personality, I would think, that you would consider for the Air Force Academy that doesn't care about that stuff anyway?
Well, any student that goes to a service academy, whether you're talking about Army, Navy, or Air Force, gets paid a monthly stipend. So they make about $1,200 a month. Obviously, that there's some taken out for taxes and things of that nature. So any student at a service academy gets paid. I think the deal with the kids that go to the academies is they tend to look at things in the long term as opposed to the short term. You're talking about your payoff's going to be when you're 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old, not necessarily when you're 17 or 18 years old. And I think obviously I'm not
Coach. Hey Coach. Okay. Yeah, keep going. I'm sorry.
I'm not necessarily a big fan of the NIL, although I do think it's good that players are getting paid something. But some of these sums that you hear about are just astronomical, and I'm curious how many players really do get that much money. So again, it's not a world that we're really involved in at the Air Force Academy, and so again, I'm just thankful to be in the situation that I am here. Okay,
Coach. Looking around at college football and what you've seen in your years, Coach Ellingsworth, an offensive line coach I know that coached at small schools like Rhodes College for about 38 years, told me a couple of years ago something that really stuck out. Art Kehoe, former offensive line coach at Miami, years ago predicted the prima donna in football would be the wide receiver. And here we are today. It's all about the wide receiver. What's happening to the running backs? If you can't run the ball and you don't have a solid running game, got to have an offensive line too. You don't play good defense. It all starts up front. Why do people think they can change that?
Well, I think obviously, Rob, style of offensive have changed at certain places. At the Air Force Academy, that's not the case. I mean, we've led the country in rushing 3 straight years. For the first time in my career, had an opportunity to be on a team where we had the leading rusher in the country, and so I think at some programs they've spread it out so much. You're getting 3, 4, 5 wide receivers on the field. Uh, I'm still enough old school to think that it's a line of scrimmage game. You better be good in the defensive line and the offensive line. And hey, when you look at Air Force football, hey, we were good in the offensive line. Our defensive line was good, and consequently, we had the number one defense in the country. You look at Georgia. Hey, Georgia's terrific in the defense.
Coach, hold those thoughts because you're going right down the path I want to hear. We're going to take a quick break back with Coach Tim Horton right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Coach Horton, you were making a great point about the running game and how that translates to a defense. And you mentioned Georgia right before the break. Let's carry on that conversation. It's very interesting.
Well, I've just always believed, and I'm probably enough old school that, particularly in the Southeastern Conference, but I think football in general, if you're not strong in the offensive line, if you're not strong in the defensive line, I think, boy, it makes it tough to win championships. It makes you tough to win a bunch of games. I mean, I think you look at the national championship game and what was the biggest difference in those two teams. Georgia's offensive line, Georgia's defensive line compared to what TCU had. It really wasn't close. And so I still believe that you got to be able to, stop the run and get a pass rush with a strong defensive line. And then, offensively, you got to be able to run the ball for first downs when you need to on third down.
Yeah, you look at history in college football. You were the only, but your first year on the staff at Auburn in 2013, Auburn led the nation in rushing. And with the SEC's history going back to 1933, you do know that's the only time an SEC school has ever led the nation in rushing. That's kind of hard to believe. I don't know what you attribute that to, because we've always run the ball down in the South. That's just hard-nosed. Run the ball, play great defense, and have a solid kicking game.
You're right. That was quite an accomplishment back in 2013. And obviously the thing that those teams had is you obviously had really good tailbacks. You had Trey Mason and you had Cameron Artis-Payne. At the same time, you had another quarterback that was like a tailback, and that was Nick Martin. So you almost had two tailbacks on the field every snap. And so, and again, you had a quality defense that they got off the field. So consequently, you're winning the time of possession. You're winning the number of plays that you ran each game. And so that helps you lead the country in rushing as well, which is kind of the formula that we've got at the Air Force Academy. If our defense, which was really good at getting off the field on third down, that allows your offense to stay on the field a little bit more, and you can do things like that.
Yeah. Coach, Memphis had a running back just a few years ago, Kenneth Gainwell out of Yazoo City, Mississippi, or outside of Yazoo City. I mean, he grew up in the country. and he was ranked as the number 124 running back in high school by the recruiting services. That was the average ranking. He goes to Memphis and has over 1,400 yards his first year there. He's in the NFL. Of course, he was in the Super Bowl playing for the Eagles. He had 7 carries for 21 yards. You know the running back position like a great money manager knows a good stock pick. Okay, we'll call you that in that elite category. Tell me, how could people miss so badly just because he's in a small school in a small town and he didn't go to the camps? Some of these kids don't have the money to go to the camps. Can that hurt you more than people realize if you're not in those camps?
It can. Recruiting has changed so much. In fact, we're planning our summer schedule right now, and one of the things that as a staff we're doing is, hey, we're going to the camps in Dallas, the camps in Chicago, the camps in Kansas City, camps all over the country to look at players. So I do think in ways that can hinder you if you're a recruit and you can't get to a lot of camps. At the same time, running backs, wide receivers, particularly when you talk about in the South. I mean, I've always thought this about East Texas as well. There's a good skill player at every little small town in East Texas you go to. Now, some of them might not be great students, but there are quality players out there. And as a coach, as a recruiter, you just got to find them. You got to beat the bushes. And especially for a kid that, maybe a kid is a backup all the way until his senior year, or maybe, he's having to share time or something like that. And so you just got to do your due diligence. And, for me, I'm always looking for 7 qualities in any player. Is he fast enough? Does he have the strength level? What's his size like? Is he have savvy? Is he tough? Football intelligence? And does he love the game? And so, people miss, and someone like Kenneth is probably another great case of someone that is a really high level player. And obviously Memphis did a great job of getting him.
Yeah. And you look at some of the running backs that you have coached over the years, Felix Jones at Arkansas, Darren McFadden, Peyton Hillis, and glad to see he's recovering after his incredible experience down on the Gulf Coast. But 2 of those were in-state kids. Felix was a couple hours west over in Tulsa. And I think of Madre Hill. I think of a lot of great running backs. Arkansas per capita produces some really, really talented players. And we hear about, Miami of Ohio is the cradle of coaches. Arkansas is the state of coaches. You reel off that list. Your father pointed this out to us on the show a couple of years ago about the coaching tree Frank Broyles had at Arkansas. Raymond Berry, Pete Carroll, Jimmy Johnson, Barry Switzer, and you had Joe Gibbs, all on the staff at the same time or right there around the same time?
That's pretty amazing. I mean, that's some terrific coaches. But you're right. The state of Arkansas has been blessed with some terrific running backs, and not all of them went to Arkansas. I mean, Memphis got some good ones, and Tennessee got some good ones, and Auburn got some good ones. And so, Arkansas has a tradition of really producing some high quality running backs. And I was certainly blessed at Arkansas to coach some really good ones.
Of all the running backs, Felix, I'd say Darren McFadden, how tall was he? 6'2", 6'3"?
Darren was a terrific looking young man. I mean, when he walked through the door, you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you want your running back to look like. He was quite a specimen.
But he was tall. And you look now, a guy like Cameron Artis-Payne, he was a junior college player. When you think about some of the players that have come out, Rudy Johnson and Cameron Artis-Payne are 2 junior college running backs that had great careers at Auburn. Cameron Artis-Payne out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and Rudy Johnson was from near Virginia Beach when he came to Auburn. What's happening now, as you see it, to junior colleges and high school players with the portal being out there, and almost half the kids going in the portal aren't getting picked up? And do you ever get players at the Air Force Academy that come in via the portal, or can that even happen because of the fact that you've got to go through such a regimented schedule structure at the academy?
Well, we don't have transfer students, so I mean, every kid that comes to the academy's got to go through 40 days of basic training and then start as a freshman. So I guess technically you could get a transfer student, but we don't have any on our roster, or really many at all at our school. So that's something we have to deal with. But you're right. I mean, I think that the number of high school kids that are signing scholarships to go to any university is decreasing because of the portal. That's obviously not good for high school athletics. That's not good for, and I would say junior college is the same way, because, you know, if you're at school A and you know, you don't get who you want, you just go to the portal and get someone. And so I don't know that I like that, or the direction of that in college football.
Yeah.
At the same time, at the Air Force Academy, that's not something that we have to deal with. So selfishly, I'm kind of glad about it, because I tell you what, I think we are able to get, I think from a recruiting standpoint, that kid that was going to sign the 22nd scholarship at Auburn now is not signing the 22nd scholarship at Auburn.
That's right.
And be able to pick him up at a place like the Air Force Academy if he's academically qualified.
Yeah, and that's the big part of it. But I'm just wondering, you know, the portal's been around since October 15th of 2018, and I'd love to see the numbers. What it's done, first off, how many of them that go into the portal are never picked up versus, you know, staying where you were and fighting through it. And I understand there's always legitimate reasons to leave. I mean, you can find all the excuses in the world to quit, but we all know, and there's nothing wrong with saying it, old school, whatever. How many times in life have you been in a tough situation and you fought through it? And if you can't learn that lesson, you'll quit everything.
Absolutely. I think if you look at it,
yeah. Coach, you know, I look at the numbers. I look at the numbers of people. It's got to be 45 to 50%. So it's in the thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, again, that's, and again, it's just an interesting dynamic right now, college football and where it is and what it's going through. I just hope in the near future that we can get some, you know, some guidelines and boundaries in place in terms of particularly the NIL situation.
Harvey Schiller was former commissioner of the SEC in the late 80s. He's the one who came up with the idea, hey, it doesn't say anywhere in the NCAA rule book that you can't have a divisional format and having a conference championship. Is he an Air Force Academy graduate, or do you know him?
He is, yes.
Okay.
I've met him. I don't really know him that well. He was a good friend of Coach DeBerry's.
Okay.
Was on the faculty here at the academy for a long time.
Okay. That's one I'd love to talk to because, man, what he did for college football, and then Commissioner Kramer finished it off. But I'm just looking at it and thinking, I'd love to see the numbers of high school players. You figure there's 131 Division I schools in America playing college football. And if each one of them were to sign, you know, 25 players, and I think I've done the math on it, but I'll just to make sure I get it right. I was thinking it was about 3,250, but if you took 131 times 25, well, I was off. It's 3,275. So if everybody signed a full class, that's 3,275. Some years, and now with the portal rules, you can sign more than 25. Your overall numbers on your team can't be above 85 scholarship players. I'm just curious what the high school, if that's all coming out of high school, I'm saying, how many of those now, Coach, would you estimate of that 3,275 out of 131 Division I schools on National Signing Day, you finish it up in February. What percentage you think are high school, and what percentage you think they're signing out of the portal?
I would think, and again, I don't have those numbers.
Yeah.
I would think you're still over 50% of high school signees, but not by much, not by much at all. So, shoot, you're looking at, 1,500 portal signees at least, and maybe a little high school signees at least. And so, and again, I don't have those numbers, so that's purely speculation.
Yeah. So, but versus going back before the portal, you were signing either high school or junior college, and you may get, guys have always transferred. I know when you were coaching, I'm sure you had guys that were on your team that came to you and they wanted to transfer because they didn't think they were playing enough. I mean, that's in business. Someone thinks they're not getting, or a guy works at a TV station. Now, I want to be on the set. I think I'm good enough, and you're not. Well, I guess you go to another TV set, or you just get better and stick it out. But these numbers they're gonna at some point we're gonna have to pay up, and I'm concerned about that, because you look historically at schools that go heavy in junior college versus building from high school. If you're signing 10 or 12 players in a class out of junior college, that can catch up with you. But this thing with the portal, it bears watching. Now, all right, so getting back to it, Air Force being in the Mountain West Conference, competition wise, what is it about the Mountain West, the Pac-12, the competition you see out there, and what you see in the SEC? Is it the size and speed combination, the sheer numbers down here? What really sticks out?
Well, the number one is the numbers, because you've got so many more people involved in football in the South than you do out West. Just the passion that you have in the South. The Mountain West is an interesting league, because when I was here the first time coaching at the academy, before I went and coached in the SEC for about 14 years, Utah was in the league, U was in the league, BYU was in the league. And now those teams have moved on to other leagues. Now kind of the marquee programs in our league are San Diego State, Fresno State, the Air Force Academy. And so there's a chance that we could lose a couple of more schools to other leagues. And so there's been a lot more, conference affiliation changes in our league than obviously what you see maybe in some other leagues. The SEC is not obviously going to lose anybody. They're gaining people, especially, two big dogs like Texas and Oklahoma. And so, but just the passion of football in the Deep South compared to what you get out West is so different.
Yeah. You just mentioned the two big guys, Texas and OU. Those are blue bloods in college football. Texas ran off a lot of people having the Longhorn Network. Let's be honest about it. That's what happened, I think. OU struggled the first year under Brent Venables. He didn't forget how to coach. They had the number 6 recruiting class in the country this past year, which would have put them probably 4th or 5th in the SEC. But still, they're coming in a year early. July of 24, they'll be in the league, and they'll start playing September of 24. There's all kind of theories. They're going to crumble. They're not going to be able to compete. I don't buy that. I think they're going to recruit even better players now that they know they're coming into the SEC. And obviously there'll be a little bit of a learning curve, but remember the predictions about Missouri. 2 of the first 3 years they were in the league, they went to Atlanta to play for the SEC championship. Georgia was a little bit down. So was Florida. So was Tennessee. But stuff like that happens. There's always a reason. But how quickly do you think Oklahoma and Texas are going to catch on in the SEC? We're going to get your answer because I want to hear what you have to say. You have a lot of experience. I know those programs. After this quick commercial break, Rob Browne with Coach Tim Horton on Monday's edition of Sidelines. More after this.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, Coach. Again, Texas and OU coming into the league in the fall of 24. What do you think will happen? Because they've got money, they got tradition, but they're going to have 14 new friends.
Well, I don't think you'll see Oklahoma or Texas crumble at all. Now, Oklahoma has gone through a cycle here over the last 10 or 15 years where they've won a string of Big 12 championships. And I don't think that'll definitely happen in the Southeastern Conference with the Sooners. But, you know, they've had a good string of BCS bowl appearances and college football playoff appearances. And I still think they're very capable of doing that, maybe not as consistently as they have the last 10 or 12 years. And then I think Texas will be competitive. I think the big interesting thing in college football right now, particularly for the SEC fans, is how is the schedule going to play out in 2024? What's that format going to look like? Because who you're playing is definitely going to determine, you know, to a great extent, how far you can go.
Yeah, and you know, look at Georgia right now. They've won back-to-back national championships. They'll be going for 3 in a row this coming year. Alabama, they're not going anywhere. They just had the number 1 ranked recruiting class in the country. So, you know, you look around and you say, there's really in the SEC, there's nowhere to hide. But right now they're in the Big 12. And I thought this past year, maybe the best thing that happened for the Big 12's future was that Texas or OU were not the team from that league in the national championship game. TCU's got a lot of money. Recruiting wise, they've only signed 1 5-star in their history, and that was Zach Evans, the running back out of Houston North Shore, who transferred to Ole Miss. Can TCU keep it up, or Baylor? I mean, financially, they've got money, but Lance Leipold at Kansas, he's doing a good job there. I think the Big 12, pretty darn good football league.
It is. It's a really good league. And, you know, but I mean, let's say it like it is. The Southeastern Conference is the cream of the crop. And you've got, you know, the best players. You've got some terrific coaches. You've got great support in terms of fan bases and financial support and, you know, television revenue. And so, you know, yes, the Big 12 is a good league, but, you know, right now we get it. It's not at the same level as the Southeastern Conference.
Yeah. So tell me, spring practice, I'll let you go after this. Spring practice getting underway out there in Colorado Springs. I'm sure there's snow outside in there. Y'all got snow on the ground? Okay. And yeah. What's the weather like out there right now? I mean, it's still ski season.
It is. It's and you kind of went off on me there for a little bit, Rob, but weather's clear and cool today. In fact, our kids are actually out of school today because of President's Day or President's Weekend. We kick back with spring practice tomorrow, so it's kind of a day at home and fixing to take the dog on a hike here in a little bit.
Well, Colorado Springs is a pretty big city. Half a million people.
Absolutely. And in fact, it's really growing, and it's a great place to live. We got some great restaurants. We got some good colleges here in town. We've got a lot to offer.
Coach, man, always love having you on here. Love to get your insight. We'll talk again soon. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope y'all have a great practice. We'll talk again when y'all wrap it up. All right. That is Coach Tim Horton, United States Air Force Academy out there in Colorado Springs. Of course, he coached 14 years at Arkansas, Auburn, Vanderbilt, doing his second tour at the Air Force Academy. Franz Beard joins us right now. Oh, Matt Dean. I can't have my glasses on here. Matt Dean is on with us right now. Franz Beard will be on momentarily. Matt, I'll tell you one thing. Interesting getting Coach Horton's perspective. He's out there at the Air Force Academy. Like I said, I just was curious if just to make sure if they ever got a transfer student in, of course, they'd have to start from scratch, go through basic training, and then go through the rigors of the Air Force Academy and the academics. It's, similar, of course, to what we face in the Southeastern Conference. But I love to get that take on Oklahoma and Texas. They're not going to crumble. They're not. I really believe, quite frankly, they got bored once they knew they were leaving to go to the SEC. They couldn't really do it because of the scheduling, I'm sure. They're better off the sooner they get out of the Big 12 into the SEC. But it was a great thing for that conference, for TCU to play for the national championship. Now, they didn't provide much opposition to Georgia. Georgia couldn't do anything wrong. I think Georgia scored on 9 of their 10 possessions, touchdowns. But going forward, they can say, well, hey, Texas, no, you were leaving, but the last team in this league that played for the national championship was TCU. But they are coming into the league a year early. They're not good just in football, but basketball, baseball. Look at the College World Series last year. Of the 8 teams that were out there, you had Arkansas, Auburn, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. And then you had Oklahoma and Texas from the Big 12, future SEC members. 6 of the top 8 are schools that either are in or are going to be in the SEC very soon. I don't buy that thing that, well, they don't know. They hadn't played this kind of competition. I think they'll catch on quickly.
Good morning, Rob. Absolutely. Without question. And you look at the history of both programs in many sports, right? And I think if I'm looking at it from an Oklahoma perspective, they've had more recent football success. Obviously, the Vince Young National Championship for Texas with Mac Browne. But, the power of the Texas brand, the power of the Oklahoma brand, they're not afraid of no one, brother. They're going to compete at the highest level. And it's already shown really in recruiting. You look at the classes that Texas and Oklahoma have this year at football. Now, Texas took a little bit of a hit with the Chris Beard situation. And just to be fair, Coach Beard was dismissed from those charges recently. But Rodney Terry has done a terrific job in his absence. And they're a program that come tournament time will have a shot at, advancing deep into the tournament. I've also been a fan of Oklahoma from an administration standpoint. They just do things right across the board. You look at the success they've had in all their women's sports as well. And think about what you just said, Rob. If you include Oklahoma and Texas, 6 out of the 8 are either SEC or future schools in the Elite 8 for baseball last year. You look at what the SEC has done with football. Now, I do think this. I think they've faced a lot of competition, Rob, but the reality is it's kind of like your quote you've used before about the definition of, going into the SEC from Arkansas's perspective. It's like playing Texas every week. It's every week you have got to be buttoned down. You got to be deep because in football you're going to get some injuries. And I'm just looking forward to the scheduling because it's going to be interesting how they divide everything up.
Yeah, it is. And we don't know what they're going to do with the schedule. We can have 4 14 pods. We're just going to have the 7-1 rule, where you keep one permanent rival, play 7 schools 1 year, and rotate the other 7 the next. That's a possibility. What do you like that one? That would mean you would also end some games as an annual rivalry. Florida, Georgia. Hopefully they'll keep that one. I would assume Auburn, Alabama would stay the permanent one. That'd be a challenge, Matt.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of eliminating historical rivalries. I'm not. The one thing about the SEC, geography matters, but it doesn't matter at the expense ratio. What I mean by that is they're not going to be worried about an Oklahoma-Florida matchup for cost, right? I mean, they're gonna figure out what to do that's best for the conference. On the West side, we're always going to have to see Auburn, Alabama, right? We're going to have to see the Egg Bowl, right? The ones that are interesting, I think, if you look at the newer members, and I say that they've been in over a decade, is A&M and Arkansas. If you look at the history, A&M and Texas haven't played a lot over the. I mean, they're bitter rivals, but I can't remember the last time they've played. So with the proximity and A&M now and Texas right there together, that's got to become like Georgia, Florida, or Auburn, Alabama, doesn't it? If you're going to put them in this league, and Oklahoma, Texas, the Red River game, right? I mean, those things have to stay. And I think it's easier to do things scheduling, Rob, when you look at a basketball schedule because it's double round robin, and baseball because you're playing 3-game series. Yeah. But football's the tricky one because you play, single games. You play 12 max, and you'll still probably have 2 non-conference, I'm guessing. So football's really, to me, everything else is going to be figured out because you play multiple games. In baseball, I know at our level we play 40. I think it's more at the Division I level, but I think the football element alone is going to be the trickiest to figure out.
It is, and that's what holds everything else up. That's pretty obvious. Let's look at basketball right now. Looking at the rankings coming in, they're going to change this week.
Yeah.
At Alabama 1, Houston 2, Purdue 3, UCLA 4, Kansas 5, Texas 6, Virginia 7. Okay. Of those teams, obviously Alabama lost. And they didn't shoot well. Tennessee out everything to Alabama up in Knoxville last week.
They did.
Tennessee had 2 starters out. Alabama had 1 big man out. But I think the SEC again. I don't think the league is. It's. I don't think it's a great league. I'm going to be shocked if the SEC has more than 1 team in the Elite 8. We may not have anybody get there. I don't know. In the Big Ten, they're going to get a bunch of bids. Purdue, how good is Purdue? Where is the best basketball being played in America right now, as you see it? Because you watch a lot of basketball.
I would have to say I still probably favor the Big 12 as a conference.
That's what I think.
You look at the way Kansas has played this year. Baylor has had a good run. Texas, TCU, Kansas State has had a fine run. Iowa State. I've just mentioned 6 teams that could all possibly go to the Sweet 16 or higher right there. But I'm going to take a team that's no one is talking about, and I love their coach, and I love their toughness, the way they compete. I still think Mick Cronin, UCLA, is going to be a factor. We forget about the Pac-12, especially in basketball, Rob, because we go to bed. We've watched the 6 o'clock game on SEC Network. Maybe we stay up for the 8 o'clock game, and we don't see those UCLA Bruins play enough. They are tough. They are physically tough. They compete every night. If you're looking for a sleeper team in a bracket right now, I much prefer UCLA over some of the top teams in the Big Ten. That's just me personally. And how about this? ACC used to rule in college basketball. What do we think of the ACC? The reality is Duke and North Carolina, I know Virginia is always tough. I love Tony Bennett, their coach. But I'm going to go to the Big 12. I'm going to probably say I could see – I'm not sure Kansas is going to repeat, but I can see Kansas getting back to the Final Four. I do think Alabama kind of shot the ball a lot better against Georgia, Rob. Give them credit this weekend after that bad performance against Tennessee. And then how about Tennessee? They went 4-14 from the foul line against Kentucky, and they lose on the road. Kentucky sweeps the season series. Everybody's concerned about Kentucky making the tournament. I still think Kentucky's going to get in. I love the fact they have a dominant big man, Oscar Tshiebwe. And I really think that even though the SEC, we're a little concerned right now, I still think Alabama can make a deep run. I still think Tennessee can make a deep run. Last week I was wrong. I thought Auburn on their home court was going to get Alabama. They played really well for 35, 36 minutes. They did not. I'm just telling you, yesterday Houston beat Memphis. Houston's going to be in the top 2 again because of their record, but Houston's also a team that lost to Temple, Rob. So I don't see a clear-cut team out there that you can say that team's a definitive going to the Final Four like we've had in the past.
Yeah, I don't either, but I do think the Big 12 is the best basketball league in the country. I mean, tradition-wise, top to bottom, historically, ACC is my league that in terms of just the passion and it matters the most. SEC's trying to make a move, but I just think the SEC's brand of basketball is not translating other than what Kentucky has done historically. But even with Kentucky now, they're bringing in these one-and-done type guys, and it's hard to build a team with a bunch of guys who are not really completely dialed in to Kentucky. They're thinking, what's my NIL deal? Getting to the NBA. Sure, they all have dreams like that. I mean, you don't want to recruit kids that don't want to be the best. But I think the SEC has inflated its value as a basketball league. And I think we've got some overrated coaches, overrated teams, and overrated programs that really need to step it up. Look, what Bruce Pearl's doing at Auburn is good, but they're not winning. They're not getting blown out, but they're not winning the close games. You got to get stops. And look, spare me the officials are out to get us narrative. I'm really tired of hearing that from a lot of fans of different schools. I mean, I get it. When you go on the road in the SEC, and that's college basketball nationally, you're not going to get calls.
No,
you're not. Nobody does, do they?
No, that's the thing. When I coached college basketball, I always told my team that we have to be 8 to 10 points better on the road. I really felt like that. All
right.
We're not in our own beds. We're not going to get those calls. We're not shooting on those rims every day. And quite frankly, the crowd matters more in basketball than any other sport because they're on top of you. You know what I'm saying? There's 4 things right there. So when you get a road win against a quality opponent, it's like a gold bar. And, right now, when you're a dominant team, the road doesn't affect you as much. That's why you see a lot of teams now with 4, 5, 6 losses that are good teams because there's no dominant team.
Yeah, let's do this. Hold us thoughts. Matt Dean, Billy Roberts, we're going to talk more. What's going on with SEC basketball? Are they really that good? I don't think so after this. All right, let's just beat up on the SEC basketball here. Matt Dean, Rob Browne, Billy Roberts were talking. I mean, we're in the SEC in football. Look, it's the best league out there. It's not in basketball. We got a lot of great athletes, but not that many great basketball players. Kentucky has more talent than anybody in the league, and they've won 18 games, but they've swept the series with Tennessee. How good is Tennessee? I mean, Rick Barnes wins a lot of games. How many Final Fours has Rick Barnes been to? Bruce Pearl's been to one with Auburn. Hadn't been close since then. You look at Alabama with Nate Oates. You want to be the best team in the country. You got to go on the road and win, Billy Roberts. Big 12 is the best basketball league in the country. And that Big 12 SEC matchup told us a lot about where the SEC stands and who's the king of college basketball, didn't it?
For sure, yeah. And, the SEC seems like there's a little bit of mediocrity right now. They are beating each other up. And the road wins are not easy to come by. But Matt made a point that if you're good enough, it doesn't matter if you're playing at home or away. But yeah, it doesn't look good. I mean, I think there's going to be some early dismissals in the SEC. In the March Madness tournament. Unfortunately, this isn't the year. Maybe it's cyclical. Big 12 seems to be on an upswing right now. SEC a couple years ago, just a couple years ago, was doing better. So it might just be a cycle.
Well, I think it's, if you look at the players, and look at shooting, Matt, the SEC ranks 32nd out of 32 conferences in 3-point shooting for intra-conference games. The SEC ranks 28th out of 32 conferences out of the 357 schools that are eligible to go to the NCAA March Madness. They rank 28th out of 32 in 2-point shooting. What's that telling you?
Well, Rob, as a former basketball coach, I can spin this for you as well. I can say maybe they're the best defensive conference in the country. Yeah. Well, I don't know, because, hey, if I guard the 3-point line, Rob, I got a better chance of lowering your percentage of conversion. Does that make sense?
Yes. So, I'm going to put you on the Sunday morning talk shows.
Listen, hey, I had my greatest team. I had 2 teams back-to-back that won 50 out of 58 games. Never lost a game by more than 4 points. We didn't shoot 31% from 3 as a team. But you know what? Our turnover margin was top 5 in the nation. Our field goal percentage was top 10 in the nation. There are different ways to achieve it. So I just jumped on the net ratings, okay? This is what the NCAA does with the quad 1 through 4, right? They still have Alabama and Tennessee 2nd and 3rd in the country in the net rankings. If you look at quad 1 wins, Alabama's 7-4 and Tennessee is 6-3. The best Big 12 team is Kansas right now at 6. But here's where they got something that no one else does. They've played 18 quad 1 games. They're 13-5. So to me, if you want to look at a precursor to success in the tournament, Kansas has played the best schedule in the country, it looks like, or one of the tops, and has 13 wins in the quad 1. So I like your Big 12 argument because of the depth of the league. But let's not forget, too, what Billy said. They are beating themselves up right now. Every conference in America, because there's no dominant team. Like if you look at the Big 10, everybody's tied in 3rd at 9-7. The 3rd place team in the Big 10 has 7 losses. Why is that? There's no dominant team. We're winning home games. We're losing on the road. And the same thing's happened in the SEC. Another team we're not talking about that's really well coached, Texas A&M is 11-2 in the conference.
Yeah,
I know we forget about them because we don't think of A&M in basketball, but Buzz Williams is one of the best coaches in the country. And I still think Nate Oates has got a chance to have Alabama on a special run. I really do. And let's make this – Tennessee is the best defensive team in the country, bar none. They just have problems scoring the basketball. Goes back to your point. I agree with you, but defense does matter.
No, absolutely it does. If you can get guys to play defense in a game where you're not shooting well and you get 8 or 10 turnovers that you might not have gotten otherwise, right, that wins a game for you. And I like that statistic winning 50 out of 58 in 2 years, never lost a game, 4 points. And now let's take it another step. Billy's right. You're all right. I'm just trying to be provocative, play devil's advocate. I know the SEC is good basketball, but you want to be number one. You know? Let's not make everybody average. I know that's very popular among a lot of people in society, but we're not all the same. You can make everybody average if you want to.
Right.
But we're not all the same. We're all different. We all got our own social security number and our own DNA. What I think makes the SEC going to have a chance to do something, go deep into the NCAA tournament is A, the athleticism, B, they will play defense, and C, the competitive nature of March Madness. But I don't care who they are. I'm pulling for the SEC when we get into that tournament. And I'm looking here. You mentioned Buzz Williams at Texas A&M, Matt.
Yeah.
And Billy. This poor guy, he's one of the last 2 or 3 people wearing a 3-piece suit in America. I love the guy. As a coach, he's fantastic. He's 12-2. A&M is 12-2 in the SEC. And I'm perusing the rankings right now. And guess what, guys? A&M is not ranked.
They're not.
They're 12-2 in the league. They are the Rodney Dangerfield of college basketball. What is it that people in the media that vote on these polls don't like about Texas A&M? It can't be the 3-piece suit. Is it the cheers, the yell leaders? I mean, what is it? I'll start with you, Billy.
I have no idea. I mean, your record, like, was it Bill Parcells says you are what your record says you are,
yeah.
Right? And it says they're pretty good. I mean, look at poor Auburn. They've lost a bunch of heartbreakers, 3 or 4 or 5 games, that were a basket or 2. They could have a much better record, but it's a war of attrition in the league right now. But A&M has, found a way to win those games that Auburn has not. Auburn's got a good shot at getting to the tournament. I think maybe 8 teams might get into the tournament, possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot for the SEC to put 8 teams in the tournament. So, maybe it is that they're just killing each other. There are a lot of great athletes, and they're just wearing each other down here late in the season. That could be what's going on. But A&M has got a record that says they're worthy of respect. So, they keep winning. If they win the SEC tournament, that'll be the narrative then. Like, hey, we didn't see these guys coming, and they're pretty good.
Matt, last year, A&M, everybody was just pleading on their behalf for them to get an NCAA tournament bid. They didn't get it. They went deep in the NIT, won 27 games. And don't give me that stuff that, wow, they're the 69th best team in the country. BS. A lot of those, and Billy, y'all know this. Everybody with gray matter in their brain knows this. Half the teams in the NCAA tournament are fillers. They're automatic bids. A&M, they are 12-2 in the SEC, 13-1 at home, 6-3 on the road. Is it they're 1-3 on neutral sites? Is it lack of tier 1, quad 1 wins? What is it, Matt? I mean, you're a basketballologist, as Billy is a Bravesologist.
I think they don't always do it pretty.
That's right.
They remind me of they're the Memphis Grizzlies of the NBA. I live in Memphis, and they just find a way to get it done without John Morant. Obviously, they don't have John Morant, but they're well coached. They're very prepped for every game. They do well in the conference. They stub their toes sometimes early on in the season out of conference. They don't have the plethora of quad 1 wins, but in the league, they're having a ton of success. Now, how they finish up the last 3 or 4 games, that'll be a big determination. But I think they're in comfortably. I think another intriguing team this year, you look at, there was a lot of hoopla discussed about Arkansas. And they're just 500 team in the SEC. I think they're 7-7. But they certainly passed the eye test when I watch them play at home. But they've struggled sometimes on the road. Mississippi State's had some good wins recently. Kentucky's won 2 big games their last 2 games, but they've had some bad games. I'll tell you a sleeper team I like. He's done a tremendous job. Is Shaka Smart at Marquette. We don't talk about the Big East, that league, as much, but them and Xavier, and also Creighton are three quality teams out of that league. This is a year, guys, that you could see a Final Four that is a bunch of 4 and 5 seeds. You really could. Because I don't think there's no dominant one. I watched Purdue. I'm a Big Ten guy. They got the Edney young man who's terrific, 7'4". But, if you can take away their 3-point shot and have some kind of presence on the glass, they could get knocked out, easily the second weekend.
Yeah, and Gonzaga this year is way back, like at 13 in the rankings. But I don't get it. Other than it's just about looks. It's based purely on what you look like as a team, how dominant your wins are, but A&M is 12-2 in the SEC. If you're going to rank Tennessee and you're going to rank some of these other schools, I mean, they had Auburn ranked for a long time. I tell you when Auburn got in trouble was when they had sole possession after Gonzaga was beaten at home and the 72-game winning streak at home was broken. And we heard about Auburn's 28-game home winning streak. Yeah. And I was very concerned with A&M coming to town. Again, people just don't get respect. They're kind of like, A&M, they're just this blue-collar team. Well, they win.
They do.
They came in and kicked Auburn's butt at Auburn Arena, 79-63. Beat them again 2 weeks later in College Station. And I know I hear all this. They shot 37 free throws and Auburn shot 12 or 14. You better quit whining about the officials because your team's going to start thinking it's okay when you lose because the officials were out to get you. You better toughen those guys up. And I'm serious. I want to see Auburn win every game. Just like Alabama fans want to see their team win every game. But I think you're just, your virtue signaling is what you're doing. But the officials aren't going to change. You're not going to get calls on the road. And I like your theory, Matt. You got to be 7 or 8 points better on the road to win than you are at home to win. That's just the way it is. And that message is not, getting through, Billy.
Yeah, it's I think it's the SEC, if they've got anything going on right now, maybe as the SEC network has helped put some of these teams on TV where other people can see them, and where back in the day, there wasn't all that many SEC games on TV. So maybe the exposure of the SEC network, has helped in that regard. People are seeing these teams, and A&M, has been underrated, but they've won, a couple of games. Vanderbilt's been on a winning roll, too. So, I think that exposure and belief, and then people seeing the teams on TV that they otherwise may not see will help that perception a little bit.
It will. And Matt, let's switch gears now, looking around. We talked so much about the Big Ten, ACC, the Big East. Now, years ago, the Big East was it in college basketball. Yeah. It was a few things that's good. And over time, teams leaving, a number of factors contributed to the demise of that league. But I think the ACC, we haven't talked much about that, and we do a lot when Tommy Kane's on here with the ACC report, but North Carolina, Duke, NC State's ranked. Yeah. Duke and North Carolina are not ranked. All right. I don't know what the odds are of, Virginia. They play that slow down brand of basketball. Tony Bennett, his father coached up at Wisconsin, the slow down brand, great defense. They've got talented players, but they have an uncomfortable style that teams don't like to play against. Just like if you've got a big guy who plays with his back to the basket and can do, hooks, turnaround jumpers, the short close-up inside 2-point game, people aren't used to seeing that. If you got a couple of guys on your team that can do that, that helps you. That's why Virginia they keep plodding along. But who's on top of the ACC right now?
Well, Matt? They are Virginia. If you look at them, are the highest ranked team in the ACC. Okay. we talk about style of play a lot, right? And you know, Virginia gets a bad rap, I think, because they are a defensive school. But you know, they've won a national championship. They lead the ACC. They're right up there with Miami, and Pitt's having a phenomenal year. We've talked about Pitt as well. But the thing about Virginia is this. Let's not forget they were also, 3 or 4 years ago, the 1 seed that was beaten by a 16 seed. That style of play means you can play with anyone in the country, but if you have a bad night shooting, you can also lose to a lot of people because you're going to keep the game a lot of times in the 50s and 60s, right? That's just when you're a tempo team and you're not worried about transition basketball, you can beat anyone, but you risk it if you're not making shots that night. And basketball, guys, I've coached it for 30 years. It's about making shots. So when you think about making shots, you're going to face some teams that will be really good defensively. So let's go back to the free throw conversation. This is important. The reason A&M got to the free throw line a lot is they attacked the rim. If you settle for jump shots and you miss jump shots, if you don't get offensive rebounds, you know what happens? You lose. And if you're aggressive and you go to the rim, you get fouled, and you make your free throws, you win. So it's your responsibility as a coach to keep that team off the line. Sometimes that requires a different defensive strategy, you know, and that's why coaching matters. So you've got these athletes in the SEC that are going up and down the floor. When Alabama is making shots, they are as good as anyone in the country.
Yeah,
they are. But I'm going to tell you, those teams like Tennessee and Virginia that are really, really good defensively, when they're not making shots, they get beat.
Yeah. Well, it's uncomfortable for teams to play teams that play that slow pace basketball, especially if you like running up and down the court. Billy, you look at North Carolina. Well, right now it's NC State, Miami, and Virginia are the 3 ACC teams in the top 25. There's no Duke. There's no North Carolina. And Pitt's not even ranked.
Yeah, and I mean, Pitt's, probably confused by that disrespect a little bit. I would imagine they're, for sure.
Yeah, but you can put Pitt in there with Texas A&M. You see Pitt. I mean, well, actually, you see Texas A&M projected as maybe an 11 seed. I would love to get one of these Ken Palm, one of these guys that does the who's in, who's out. Explain that one to me. We're going to try it right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
We are continuing to try to figure out who are the best teams in the nation in college basketball, best conferences, whatever. And y'all made me think a lot. Hopefully I've tried to make y'all think a lot, but you're right about the defensive part. If you play great defense, you can make a lot of things happen. It's kind of like if you've got a stock that you own that's trading flat. If it's paying a 4.5%, 5% dividend, or it's way down and you're reinvesting the dividends and capital gains, whatever, in a fund, that stuff can add up over time. Defense is everything. And then what you can control, you can absolutely control. You can't control how many shots you make. I mean, you can try to by practicing, but you play great defense and you shoot free throws. I don't know what the top free throw shooting team in America is, but I would be willing to bet I'd like to see this statistic, Matt. Number of teams that rank in the top 10 in the nation in free throw shooting percentage and defensive percentage, forcing turnovers. Top 10 teams in those two categories, how deep they go. We need to, what we need to do is, Matt and Billy, let's determine those 10 teams, which we'll be able to do. Or it may not be the top 10, but the top 10, there may be out of the top 15, 10 of them make it to the tournament or whatever it is. I'd love to see that statistic. Would you dare to take a guess to think how deep those teams go into the tournament, guys?
I mean, I think that it's not, when you have a good free throw shooting team, you can overcome bad calls, non-calls, that's, you got to be great at that. And teams that otherwise gripe about losing a game at the buzzer, they can look back and say, man, we missed 4 free throws that would have made the difference. So, I mean, you gotta do that. That's, nobody's in your face. You got a free shot at the basket. You got to convert those. I think you're right on that. That's a crucial part of it. And it overcomes, bad officiating or the away crowd or, all of the other things that people lean on when they lose a heartbreaking game.
Yeah. Another thing about foul shooting, Rob.
Matt, take over when Billy finishes. I want to hear your answer.
Well, no, I mean, I agree with everything Billy said. And another point of foul shooting is it helps you preserve a lead. If you get a lead late in the tournament or late in the game, and it doesn't matter if you're playing a conference game, tournament game, NCAA tournament game, that 7, 8, and 9 fouls are all 1-on-1s. And how many times have we seen teams that get up 2 possession games, miss free throws down the stretch, enable teams to finish the game off or come back? And I think if you make your free throws, you have the right people at the foul line in the crucial times, you're going to win close games. And winning close games is a product of smart basketball play, which means reducing your turnovers. And also it means, making your shots down the stretch from the foul line when you get fouled, Billy. And I think that's something that it's all common sense in basketball, but that happens a lot. Good teams. That's why I was really disappointed in Tennessee on Saturday. They were 4-14 from the foul line. And I just thought that was a factor. Kentucky played them, outplayed them the whole game. We're up 20 at the half, but you can't dig yourself a hole like that. Billy, I think we've lost Rob. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I think we've got some technical difficulty, but
Yes.
You were talking a little bit ago about in the ACC with Virginia. They for a couple of years ago, Rob and I watched them beat Auburn in the Final Four, and at the end there was a non-call on a double dribble, and they ended up going on to win the whole thing. And a lot of Auburn people were like, that was a terrible call, cost them the game at the end. But I'll bet if we went back and watched that tape today, we'd see some missed free throws down the stretch by Auburn where that last non-call by the official on the double dribble wouldn't have mattered.
That's right.
And, they could have won that game and they could have played for the championship. So, I mean, that's how important it is, and I'm sure that coaches, like you would have had to hammer that when these guys are practicing, because, perfect practice makes it perfect. They probably really have to hammer these guys, take these free throws seriously, because that cost Auburn a chance to play for the championship rather than losing that Final Four game to Virginia. Maybe 3 or 4 missed field goals, down the stretch, and it would have overcome a bad call at the end there.
And that Auburn team, Billy and Rob, played so well in the NCAA tournament, and I thought going into that Final Four, I really thought it was their Final Four to win. I really thought, as well as they were playing in all phases of the game. And it just goes to show you in basketball, when you get to the Final Four, things are so evenly matched when you don't do some of the little things. And obviously making free throws are big, and turning the ball over is big. But, we always see one call at the end that maybe fans think at that end of the game. As coaches, we look at multiple possessions.
And Pearl made that point, when they interviewed him right afterwards. Like, it didn't come down to that non-call on a double dribble. That the refs they're human.
That's right.
We had multiple chances to win that game and should have won that game. And then Virginia feeling like they had kind of gotten a stay of execution by the governor, they ended up going and winning the whole thing, because they got a second lease on life. They probably felt like they should have been out of that game against Auburn in the semifinal there. So it matters. Like the little details matter. And, with the way college athletics is right now, you put a team together and you get a cohesive group that's got some chemistry. They're not going to be together the next year, and you're going to have to rebuild the whole roster. Kentucky's mastered that. They rebuild every single year with new guys. But, you bet if you have a chance to win it all, you better go for it, because, you can't put a dynasty together in college basketball or football any longer. It's not easy to do that. People transfer and they leave early, and, so if you've got a group that clicks and they're playing well, particularly your starting five, you got to ride them and get all you can out of that, because a special season is all you're going to get. You're not going to get a special 5 seasons or 3 seasons.
Well, I think you are really too going to get guys when you take a look at Bruce Pearl said right after that game against Virginia, Auburn first 5 minutes of the second half couldn't hit the side of the barn.
Yeah.
That's you've got 40 minutes to win the game. That's why I'm saying I hate it. I understand Bruce Pearl's frustration. And if you look at the number of free throws Vanderbilt shot Saturday night when Auburn played in Nashville, but golly, he also said you got to get stops. And, why did you go back and review this play when you didn't review that one? That's why you can't have, and you do, but you try to avoid, Matt, the lulls in a 40-minute game. That's what gets you beat. In football, you can go back and damn near every football game ever played. They come down to 4 or 5 plays. That's why you've got to keep focused and have your head in the game. And if you talk about the middle 8, the last 4 minutes of the first half, first 4 minutes of the second half, it's critical, because it's about how you close the first half, how you open the second half, and how you close in the fourth quarter. Smart teams that are well coached pay attention to details, don't they, Matt?
They do. And I wanted to give you guys both. I went on the Pomeroy ratings. I decided, Rob, to get a little analytical. Normally, I'm not.
Who is Ken Pom, by the way? Who do you play for?
And they give you a ranking based on your adjusted offense and defensive numbers, your strength of schedule numbers, your opponents' records, and things like that. But it's interesting. In their view, Houston is still the number 1 team in the country. Okay. Now, I will tell you, it's a little bit like Memphis. Their problem is, if you look at quad 1 games, I told you Kansas was 13-5. Houston's only played 5 quad 1 games, 4-1. So I still worry about Houston because of the strength of their schedule. And if you remember correctly, I think earlier in the season, I believe Alabama rallied for a big deficit to win at Houston, right? They got Alabama, the second-rated team in the country. And then third, they have UCLA, and I mentioned them earlier. I think UCLA's rated third. St. Mary's College, who's coached by Randy Bennett, one of the best unknown coaches in the country, they are 8th. St. Mary's is 8th. And also Arizona. We never talk about Arizona. Arizona, they passed my eye test, even though they've lost a couple quad 1 games. So I think, Purdue's the best team in the Big Ten right now. They're saying UCLA is the best team in the Pac-12. They're saying Alabama's the best team in the SEC. We know that. And then you have Kansas at 7. And then they have Creighton at 10, even though Marquette is ahead of them in the conference standings. I'm just telling you guys, this is going to be one of the most intriguing March Madnesses we've ever seen. St. Mary's could get to the Final Four. That's the type of year we're going to have. I'm not saying they will. I didn't put it in my bracket. My bracket doesn't exist. But there's going to be 2 or 3 teams that we're like in the Elite 8 games. We're like, wow, these teams are normally not there.
Well, look at the interest at Loyola of Chicago and Sister Jean, who's, I believe, 103, 104 years old now.
Wow.
God, unbelievable. God love her.
Yes.
Oh, man. But look at the interest that creates. Look, I don't want to see Kentucky get beat. I don't want to see SEC teams get beat. But at the same time, if you take off your SEC blinders and you look at what St. Peter's did last year or St. Mary's, last night I was watching TV, turned on UNLV at Boise State.
Yeah.
Who is this guy? Najee Smith, man, for BYU. He's pretty damn good. 6'7", 220. God. I mean, it's those late night games that you got to stay up late and watch. Billy, you know it. Matt, you know it. There's college basketball is. Hey, is college basketball maybe the best game on TV? I mean, look, baseball is the best one in my opinion to attend in person. College football, it's another deal. But everything else, college basketball does on TV. It's great to watch. I don't care who's playing. It's just the shape of the court and the cameras. I think it is, Matt. Would you agree?
I agree, Billy. I don't know what your thoughts are, but for me in person, Rob, I love the baseball factor. There's nothing like a great tailgate in football, though. I want to mention that as well.
Yeah.
But like for basketball, I used to be in the '90s a big Chicago Bulls fan, Michael Jordan fan, but I have a hard time watching the NBA right now. But I love me some college basketball.
Yeah. I'm talking college basketball.
Yeah, and I think that the problem with NBA versus college is. And even college versus high school. If you go watch a high school basketball game, they play their butts off the entire time.
Yeah.
They don't coast. They're not lackadaisical. At college, it's almost that intense. Like certainly at tournament time, it is.
Yeah.
But NBA, they goof around until about 4 minutes before the half, and then 4 minutes before the end of the game. The rest of the time, it's like an exhibition. They're not playing a lot of defense. That's just my take on it. And I know that, they probably can't go max effort, for a full NBA game, and particularly when they have back-to-back games. I know that's difficult to do, and these guys are the best athletes in the world. But when you're paying $200 like I have to do to go watch the Atlanta Hawks, and they put on a sorry effort, it's not fun to think about the money you could have spent on something else. So, the NBA product in the playoffs is a different animal. But the regular season NBA to me isn't that compelling. College basketball, as they approach tournament time, is as good as it gets. Tournament basketball is incredible. That's why they get the ratings they do in the March Madness and in the conference tournaments. But, a high school game any day of the week is like max effort the entire time. And you would love to see these better athletes, better quality, games played with the kind of effort that an average high school team will put out, And I don't know if that's just the coaches demanded of them or their youthful enthusiasm kicks in and they want it more. I don't really know, but it's an interesting phenomenon to watch.
It is. And I will say this. The NBA playoffs are incredible to watch. Regular season NBA, you got 82 games. Major League Baseball regular season, you got 162 games. Again, college football, that is over here on an island unto itself. But going to a baseball game, high school, college, minor leagues, major leagues, can't beat it. Sitting in the outfield, drinking a cold beer, hot dogs, $2 hot dogs, or whatever it is. It's incredible. But college basketball on TV, even in the regular season, especially those small gyms that they play in, like up at Villanova and up in the Northeast, those are a lot of fun to watch. And I just can't. I don't know. You can't get enough of it. Matt, we have gotten in some real technical science. So let me say this real quick too. Guys, love doing this show. We need your help. Keep it growing. Do something very simple. Go to the website, www.sidelines.live. At the top of the page, hit that orange Patreon button, $5, $10 a month. That's all you need. It's easy to do. Hell, I did it last night. Even my 94-year-old dad goes, boy, that's pretty damn easy. So just remember that. And most often, folks, we see the face of Christ in the least among us. And we live in the greatest country in the history of the world, folks. Go out and help people with the expectation of getting nothing in return. Just give to give out of the goodness of your heart. Guys, I'm ready to get my brackets right now. I'm so fired up about this tournament coming up. We've bounced around a lot today talking college football, basketball, what have you. Got college baseball just getting underway. And that is growing in boom of popularity. And it's going to be, look, I think with TV, we're able to see a lot of stuff we didn't used to see. But both of y'all, closing comments in a matter of seconds here. What do you all think? Are you going to be shocked? SEC 8 teams Up, you take the over or the under. I'm with Billy. I'm at 8 teams for the SEC in the NCAA tournament. Billy?
I think so. I think you can draw a line under, the
Arkansas?
5 or 6 for sure, and
Yeah.
then a couple of squeakers that would get in. Absolutely.
Matt?
I think 8 teams. I really do. I think, from a balance standpoint, it's one of the best leagues in the country. We can debate the Big 12. I think it's better than the Big 10. I think it's better than the ACC. The Pac-12 is not as deep, though. I do think UCLA and Arizona are very good basketball teams.
I'm watching St. Mary's. And my sisters went to school there.
Yeah.
Memphis, but that's the high school in Memphis. But there's something about these small private Catholic universities that play really good basketball. And the interest, I bet the ratings were phenomenal with Loyola of Chicago when they went to the Final Four. That was a lot of fun. And Indiana's sitting there, guys. Indiana's ranked. Purdue has just pulled way ahead of Indiana in basketball, but Big Ten basketball, it's a more physical, much more physical brand of basketball than we play in the SEC. So it's a lot of fun to watch. Hey, remember, check us out Monday through Saturday, Sidelines, 6 days a week. Happy President's Day. I know everybody's been sleeping in, kind of lounging around, taking it easy. Matt's going to lead the parade later today. Billy in Atlanta as well. Hey, until then, have a great one. We'll see you tomorrow.